Digital transformation time.
I am Sergey Arisov. I build audit-grade digital environments for deep tech that has to pass certification: green aviation, nuclear, automotive, or electronics. In this episode, I'll do two things. First, I'll walk through the 6 stages of the product lifecycle. Fast, no jargon. If you've seen lifecycle diagrams before, stay with me, because the second part is where it gets useful. I'll show you why fast-growing startups quietly break the links between those stages, and what it costs them when certification or scale arrives. If you're a founder, you'll leave knowing which decision to protect. If you're a tech lead, you'll leave knowing what to build. First, a reframe. When people hear product lifecycle management, they think of a tool, a piece of software you buy. That's the trap. The lifecycle is not software. It's the path your product takes from an idea to something you manufacture, support, and eventually retire. Software can support that path. It can't create it. If the path isn't clear in how your company actually operates, no tool will save you. So before we talk about any system, let's look at the path itself. Stage 1. Concept and requirements. This is where you decide what the product must do, and just as importantly, how you'll prove it later. In regulated deep tech, a requirement isn't a wish. It's a commitment you'll have to show evidence for. Stage 2. Design. Engineering turns requirements into a concrete solution. The key question here is traceability. Can you connect every design choice back to the requirement that justifies it? Stage 3. Verification and validation. Verification asks, did we build it right? Validation asks, did we build the right thing? This is where evidence is generated, and where teams that treated requirements casually start to suffer. Stage 4. Industrialization. Moving from it works in the lab to we can make it repeatedly. Work instructions, tooling, supply chain. The design has to survive contact with the shop floor. Stage 5. Production. Build orders, kitting, routing, non-conformances. In a regulated context, every build has to be reconstructible. What was made, from what, by whom, against which baseline. Stage 6. In service and retirement. The product lives, gets maintained, modified, and eventually retired. The life cycle doesn't end at the shipping, and neither does your responsibility for the evidence. This isn't my invention. The canonical reference here is John Stark's work on product lifecycle management. He frames the life cycle as a paradigm for how a product gets released across its whole life, not as a software category. I am standing on that. What I'd add is what happens to this model under real pressure: small teams, fast growth, and auditor at the door. Here's what nobody tells you. Startups rarely fail at the stages. They fail at the links between the stages. Each stage on its own usually works. Engineering designs, shop floor builds, but the handoffs, requirement to design, design to build, build to evidence, those are where the things quietly fall apart. Why does this happen? Because in the early days, the links live in people's heads. One engineer knows why a change was made, one conversation in the hallway approves it, a drawing gets printed with 3 outstanding changes scribbled on it, and the shop floor adjusts on the fly. It flies, it works, everyone celebrates. The problem is invisible until you grow. And then one of 3 things happens. You open a second site and discover the knowledge that lived in those hallway conversations didn't travel. You scale the team, and the people who held the context are now stretched across 10 times the work. Or an auditor arrives for certification and asks you to reconstruct exactly why a change was made, who approved it, and against which baseline. If the links lived in people's heads, you can't answer. That's not an efficiency problem. In a regulated environment, that's a control problem. So here is the decision worth protecting. If you take nothing else from this episode, the links between stages are not bureaucracy you add later. They are the operating system of your company. Treating them as documentation will clean up before the audit is the single most expensive assumption a deep tech startup makes. What's the alternative? You make the links explicit. The intent behind a requirement, the change that modified it, the approval that signed it off, the baseline it belongs to, these stop living in heads and start living as connected records. There is a name for this connected backbone, the digital thread, a continuous trail that runs through every stage so that at any point you can answer, why does this exist and can we reproduce it? You don't need a huge team or a huge budget to start. You need to decide that links matter and then protect them. That's the tech lead's job, and it's what the next episode is about. Quick recap. The product lifecycle is a path, not a tool. 6 stages from concept to retirement. The stages usually work. The links between them are where the startups break. And those links aren't paperwork. They are your company's operating system and the thing certification will test hardest. In the next episode, I'll show you the digital thread in plain language. How to actually connect those stages without drowning your team in process. If this reframed how you think about your own setup, subscribe so you can catch the rest of the build. And tell me in the comments which thing in your life cycle is currently living in someone's head. Be honest.
In the swing, digital transformation time. Digital transformation time.
Let's define it in one sentence, plainly. The digital threads is the connected trail that lets you answer 2 questions about anything in your product at any time. Why does this exist and can we reproduce it? That's it. Not a platform, not a product you buy. A trail of connected records, requirement, design, change, approval, baseline, evidence. Linked so tightly that you can walk from any point to any other. Most companies have all of those records. What they don't have is the links. They have the dots. The thread is the line through the dots. Here's our story. An engineer needs to change a bracket, a small mounting part. Tiny change. Happens 100 times a week in any hardware company. Let's follow that one change through the life cycle and watch what a digital thread does versus what most teams actually do. I'll show you both versions side by side. Version A, no thread. The engineer makes the change in the CAD model. Good. They mention it to the manufacturing lead in a quick call. Approved verbally. The drawing gets reissued, but the requirement it traces back to never gets updated because nobody owns the link. The shop floor gets the new drawing, but an older kit is already staged. So someone makes a judgment call on the line. The part works. The aircraft or the machine or the device ships. Everyone moves on. Now fast forward 6 months. An auditor or a new site or a customer asks a simple question. Why is this bracket different from the spec? And you go looking. The CAD has the change, the drawing has the change, but the requirement still shows the old version. The approval was a phone call nobody logged. And the person who made the call on the shop floor has left. Every dot exists. Not one of them is linked. You cannot reconstruct the truth. That is a control problem, and in a regulated context, it can stop a certification called. Version B. Same change, but the links are explicit. The engineer raises the change as a record, not a conversation. That record is linked to the requirement it affects, so the requirement updates or visibly flags that it needs review. The approval is captured with the owner, a timestamp, and a reason, not a hallway node. The new baseline is issued, and production consumes that baseline, so the stage kit is flagged as out of date automatically. 6 months later, the auditor asks the same question, and you answer it in 30 seconds, because you can walk the thread, requirement, change, approval, baseline, build. Why does it exist? And can we reproduce it? Yes. Notice what changed. Not the amount of work. The engineers still made one change. What changed is that the links were captured as the work happened, instead of being reconstructed in a panic later. That's the whole game. The thread isn't extra work bolted on. It's the same work, captured, connected. If you want the rigorous version of it, the reference I'd point you to is Abdel Atti and Nigri. They did a systematic review conceptualizing the digital thread across the product lifecycle, the technologies, the roles, the infrastructure. It's the clearest map I've seen of what this actually requires. I'm giving you the plain language version, they give you the full terrain. Links in the description. Now the honest part. The fastest way to kill a digital thread is to try to connect everything on day one. Teams hear this and go build a cathedral. Every field linked to every other field, approvals on trivial changes, a process so heavy that engineers route around it. And the moment people route around your thread, it's worthless, because the thread is only as true as the behavior it captures. So now you know what the thread is and which links to protect first. The obvious next question is, how do you actually draw this for your own company without spending 3 weeks on it? In the next episode, I'll do exactly that. I'll take a fictional hardware startup and build its lifecycle map. And I'll show you how an AI agent can turn a pile messy documents into a first draft map in under an hour. That's where the abstract becomes a tool you can use on Monday. Recap. The digital thread is just the line through the dots, the connected trail that answers why does this exist and can we reproduce it. Without it, every record can exist and you still can't reconstruct the truth. With it, the same work is simply captured, connected. And you don't thread everything. You thread what hurts when it breaks. If this made the term finally click, subscribe, because the next one turns it into something you can actually do. And in the comments, in your version A story, where does your change get lost? Is it the approval, the requirement, or the baseline? I read this, and they shape what I cover next.
Digital transformation time.
Meet our company. Let's call it Victra, a fictional startup building electric drone delivery hardware. 40 people, growing fast, pre-certification. Their reality is the reality of almost every deep tech company at this stage. Requirements live in a mix of spreadsheets, slide desks, and email threads. Design data sits in CAD and shared drive. Changes happen in meetings. Nobody can point to a single picture of how the product actually moves from idea to build. That's not incompetence. That's just what fast growth looks like before anyone designs the operating model. Our job today, turn that mess into a first draft lifecycle map that can actually govern. Before the demo, one warning, because this is where people misuse AI. The wrong way is to type build me a product lifecycle and accept whatever comes out. You'll get something that looks impressive, uses all the right words, but doesn't match your company at all. Remember from Module 0, a generated artifact that looks complete and is hollow is the most dangerous thing in regulated work. So we're not going to ask the agent to invent a lifecycle. We're going to make it extract the lifecycle that's already hidden in the company's real documents. And then we verify every link. The agent reads and drafts, we decide and confirm. Here's our document pile for Vectra. A requirements spreadsheet, a couple of design specs, an email thread where change was approved, and fragment of bill of materials. Deliberately messy, like real life. My first prompt to the agent is not design a lifecycle. It's narrow and honest. Read these documents, identify every distinct stage the product passes through, and list what evidence each document represents. A requirement, a change, an approval, a baseline. I'm asking it to map the territory, not invent it. Look at what came back. It pulled out stages: concept, requirements, design, a change event, the start of a build definition, and it tagged each document. That alone, in a couple of minutes, is something Vectra has never had. A single inventory of what exists and where it sits in the life cycle. But, and this matters, I haven't believed any of it yet. This is a draft to interrogate, not an answer to accept. Now, the move that actually matters, and it's straight out of episode 1.2. I'm going to ask the agent to find the broken links. Prompt: for each requirement, show me whether there is a design that traces to it, whether any changes affect it, and whether an approval is recorded. Flag anything that's referenced but missing. This is the digital thread test ran by a machine across the whole pile in seconds. And there it is. The agent found that a change in the email thread modifies a requirement, but that requirement spec was never updated. It found the baseline referenced in the BOM that doesn't exist in any document we gave it. These are exactly the broken links I talked about in episode 1.2, the ones that passes unnoticed until an auditor or a second site asks. Vectra didn't know these gaps existed. In minutes, they're visible. There is the real value of an agent here, not building your operating model, but exposing where it's currently lying to you. Now, I stop the agent, because what comes next is judgment, and judgment isn't its job. The agent flagged a missing baseline. It cannot tell me whether there is a real problem or just a document we didn't upload. Only a human who knows the company can decide that. The agent proposed a 6-stage structure, but maybe Vector certification path means verification and validation must be split into 2 governed stages, not 1. The agent doesn't know Vector's regulator. I do. So I make 3 kinds of decisions the agent can't. What's actually missing versus just not uploaded, which links are mandatory versus nice to have, and who owns each one going forward. The agent gave me a draft in minutes that would have taken a consultant weeks, but the operating model is mine to decide. With those decisions made, I give the agent one more directed task. Produce a lifecycle map with these confirmed stages, mark each link as verified, missing, or to be owned, and generate a short action list of the gaps a human must close. Notice the prompt now carries my decisions. I'm not asking it to think, I'm asking it to assemble what I've governed. And here is the result: a first draft lifecycle map of Victra. Stages confirmed, broken links flagged in red, and owner to be assigned for each. A punch list of what to fix. This is something Victra can take into a governance meeting on Monday. Not a finished operating model, but a true starting point built in an afternoon instead of a quarter. Step back and notice the method, because it transfers to your company directly. We didn't ask AI to invent an operating model. We did 4 things. We fed it the real messy documents. We made it inventory what exists. We ran the digital thread test to expose broken links. And then a human, you, governed the result. That sequence works whether you're 40 people or 400. The tool changes, the method doesn't. Extract, don't invent. Expose, then govern. That's how a small team now does what used to need a department. That closes module 1. You now have the lens. The product lifecycle is your operating system, digital thread that connects it, and practical way to map your own, with an agent doing the heavy lifting and you holding the judgment. But a map exposes the gaps, it doesn't close them. The biggest gap in almost every deep tech company is the same one: requirements and change control. That's module 2, and it's where this stops being a map and becomes real control. I'll see you there. Recap: you can take a pile of messy documents and, with an AI agent, produce a first draft lifecycle map in an afternoon, as long as you extract instead of invent and govern instead of trust. The agent exposes where your operating model is failing. You decide what to do about it. If this turned the last 2 episodes into something you can actually do, subscribe and come into Module 2. And in the comments, if you ran this on your own company's documents tonight, which broken link are you most afraid of the agent would find? Be honest. That fear is usually pointing at the right place to start.
Digital transformation time.